Welcome. Today's topic is about how to rebuild trust after infidelity. I know there's a common belief that trust can't be rebuilt once it's been broken, but bear with me here. If part of you wonders how you could potentially rebuild trust because you have reasons to stay in your relationship, then I'm going to give you 5 steps that are necessary to overcome a challenge like infidelity and broken trust. So I'm really going to walk you through these 5 steps. And before we get started, and for some context, I'm going to be speaking to you here as if you're the person whose trust was broken. I'm going to I'm going to also put any type of infidelity in the same basket, whether it's emotional infidelity or physical infidelity. I'm going to really put them together and not necessarily differentiate between both. I'm basically going to define infidelity as any behavior that a reasonable, healthy human being would look at and go, that is not okay. So, any type of behavior that a reasonable, healthy human being would look at and go, that is not okay. And a lot of what I'm going to share today is also applicable if trust has been broken without it necessarily having to be through infidelity. So maybe a promise wasn't kept. Maybe your partner shared something confidential that you didn't want them to share. Maybe your partner failed to show up for you when you needed them to show up and support you. So it can apply for these different types of situations. The main topic is to rebuild trust. And I'm going to really also focus on the infidelity piece because I know that many people go through infidelity and have had their trust broken through infidelity. I have clients who have gone through that. I've seen that through my own experiences. And so I really want to guide you through these steps so that you have more clarity as to what you can do to potentially rebuild trust so that you have at least a sense of kind of like a process, kind of like, all right, this is what I can start looking at. And of course, as with any type of content that I share here, please apply it to your situation. Always take that nuance into account. I don't have all of the information about your specific situation, about how trust was broken for you, but generally speaking, I'm going to go through these 5 steps as if your trust was broken through infidelity. And I'm going to give you a general guideline as to what you can do if you want to give your relationship a chance to come out of this and a chance to have that trust rebuilt. And like I said before, there is this popular belief that when trust is broken, it's broken. But today I'm going to show you another way because there is a big portion of people who follow these 5 steps that I'm going to give you and are actually able to grow stronger from an episode of infidelity. Because it's not that they just go back to how things were before, they actually are able to learn from mistakes and grow stronger from the infidelity. And I know that can sometimes feel like it's too good to be true, especially when trust was broken. I get that. And when I speak to clients, when I speak to people around me, they tend to say, well, if I'm going to look at how to rebuild trust, I don't want to go back to how things were before because that's also potentially what led to this stage in our life and this moment in our life. And so I think there are things that we could do better. And I want to learn how we can actually do better. And so I'm going to speak to you as if you're really looking to have practical steps to rebuild this trust. And again, there is a big portion of people who are able to overcome trust or who are able to overcome infidelity and rebuild trust. And I've been looking at the internet a little bit on videos about how to rebuild trust. I've been looking at comments, and there is a big portion of you that might go, well, trust cannot be rebuilt. And I respect that. I get that. And this is for the people who do potentially see the light at the end of the tunnel, who do want to see if there is still a fair chance. And a big thing that I have observed in couples who have been able to overcome infidelity and actually rebuild that trust is if they're able to do that in a way that truly repairs the trust that has been broken, they tend to be happier and more fulfilled afterwards. Again, because they've learned from mistakes, they've built more solid foundations, and they now know how to not repeat that. So I'll go into that in a few seconds. But there's this paradoxical thing that I will just mention about trust in a relationship. We need trust if we want a healthy relationship. We do need that trust. And at the same time, a lot of solid foundations of trust tend to be built after hardships, tend to be built when we're able to overcome hardships. Whatever challenge you're facing in your relationship, there's a big chance that if you're able to overcome that and repair from that challenge and repair from the hurt that has been through this challenge, that has been experienced through this challenge, there's a lot that can be solidified. And solidified in the sense of we can do things better. This is a chance, an opportunity to learn how to do things better. And if we can do that as a team and we're both committed to doing that, then there's a lot we can do. And I'll get to that in a second again. And I will say, though, that when trust is broken, it's a particular process, which is why I wanted to do a video on this specifically, because trust takes time to rebuild. Trust isn't just something that is an overnight thing that we rebuild. And time alone isn't the only medicine when trust has been broken. We tend to think that time will help. Time is medicine. I've heard that a lot, even through my own experiences. Let time, do the healing. Let time do its own thing, and you'll see that things will get better. When trust is broken, time alone isn't enough. Especially, again, when it comes to infidelity. There are certain things that we need to do in order to rebuild trust and to be able to reconnect with our partner and actually we can grow stronger from this. I don't say every couple grows stronger after infidelity, after broken trust, but if we combine enough time and these steps that I'm going to give you, you actually have a big chance to overcome it and to grow stronger from it. And so that's what I typically see. That's what I'm very excited to share with you today, and share the different ingredients that are needed to rebuild trust. And just remember that trust is a process. We're not expecting any overnight change, but you can do a lot if you follow these different steps that I'm going to share with you. All right. Now that I've given you context, I do want to wish you a warm welcome or welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Alexandra. I'm the face behind Toolbox for Love, and I am a certified life and relationship coach, and I'm really excited to have you here. This is a place where I share educational relationship content, I debunk popular myths, I provide insights that I personally wish I had earlier, and I share a lot of the behind the scenes of my own 15-year relationship. You'll also see so much more, but that is a sneak peek. All right, let's get into step one. Step one, if you are the person whose trust has been broken, you will be feeling a lot of raw feelings. It is very normal to feel angry or sad or really, really, really hurt when trust has been broken. And I want to normalize that because there is a lot that's going to be coming up. Even confusion, the disillusionment of why could my partner do that to me? And really have that lack of clarity as to why your relationship is where it is now compared to potentially how it was a few years or even a few months, even a few weeks prior. And so in that, a lot of things will come up, and there is some type of grief involved because we're grieving a relationship that we used to know in a certain way and that now will be different in a way. And if we give it another chance, it will transform, it can transform, but it will kind of never be the same in that sense. And so there is that grief involved. And it's really important, this is step one, really important to process all of those raw feelings that are coming up. And that can be either alone, if you know how to self-regulate, if that's through journaling, through regulating the body, walks, whatever it is that you do to process your raw feelings. It can also be with someone you trust, with a therapist. So really have someone that you can process these raw feelings with, because there can be a lot of hurt depending on the degree that your trust has been broken and how much you're feeling hurt. There's a lot that's going to be coming up, and that's very normal. So I really want to normalize that. And that is the number one thing. You want to have space to process that and to acknowledge whatever is going to come up. And in that step, there is, as the person whose trust was broken, as you're going to feel a lot of things, one thing that can be really helpful is to imagine a table where you're putting a deck of cards and you're laying out different cards. Every card is a feeling. That can sometimes help to acknowledge your thoughts and your feelings and go, what am I currently feeling right now? What is currently going on for me? And imagine putting all of those cards on the table. Now, again, if you're the person whose trust was broken, a part of you might be very pissed off. Another part of you might be really just very sad. Another part of you might still want to make the relationship work. And so you want to look at these different parts. What is going on for me? What are these different parts of me saying, going, processing? And you want to acknowledge all of that. Now, the thing here is that in order to rebuild trust, you also get to choose what card you're going to play next. Once you've processed your feelings, this is step one. Once you've processed your feelings and any emotion that is coming up and you've had space to acknowledge them instead of dismiss them, then you also want to go, all right, I'm feeling all of these things. Part of me is pissed off. Part of me wants to rebuild trust. Part of me wonders if the relationship is still worth staying in. Now I get to choose what card I am going to play, which one I'm going to choose for my next steps. If you're here today and you want to potentially rebuild trust, and that's a big part of you speaking, then that's the card that you get to choose. You don't have to choose that card. You can also choose to walk away and go, I'm feeling very pissed off right now. I do not choose to rebuild trust, at least in this moment. If you do, though, choose to rebuild trust and go, I'm going to choose that card, then that's what I'm going to focus on next. You do have and get to have the space to choose to give your partner another chance, to give your partner a fair chance to rebuild trust. But you get to basically choose if you do even give that chance. So that's the card that you want to play. You want to decide what card you're going to play. And that can be helpful, especially when we have conflicting emotions. Part of us maybe loves our partner, part of us just wants them to go to hell. And so there are all of these different things that are going to come up. Again, normalize them and choose the card that you want to choose, at least for the next steps, that you want to explore for your next steps. So choose that card, choose that behavior that you're going to go, choose that behavior, but also choose that part of you that you're going to choose for your next steps, that you're going to commit to for your next steps. This is really important, especially if you're very hurt. Maybe a big part of you will not want to rebuild trust. So check in with yourself what it is that you choose to do for your next steps. Step 2. This is one of the important ones as well. Every step is important, but I feel like if this one isn't there, then the rest will be difficult to do and maybe even impossible. Step 2 is the partner who broke the trust needs to take accountability for the trust that they broke, and they need to feel a sense of responsibility and also accountability, a sense of remorse for the impact that the infidelity caused, or for the impact that their behavior that broke the trust caused, if it's not infidelity. And so this is really a crucial step for someone to be able to go, I'm sorry for the pain that I caused you. I'm sorry that I made you go through that roller coaster of emotions because I chose to cheat, because I cheated, or because I broke your trust here. This is really, really important. Not every partner does this so quickly, and not every partner even does it. So this is one that you really need to check in order to rebuild trust. We can't rebuild trust with someone who doesn't see the impact of their behavior, who doesn't take accountability, who doesn't even have any empathy for the person. So for you in that case, whose trust was broken, there needs to have a sense of accountability for their actions. If not, we can't continue into the next steps. Sometimes people take more time to see the impact because they're so into their own experience of they're so into their own experience that they don't put themselves in the other person's shoes. And that can happen. And so sometimes through couples counseling, therapy, someone can actually go, oh, now I get the impact that I had on my partner. Now I get the impact that caused, or the hurt that caused my kids or my family as a whole. But there needs to be that wake-up call. There needs to be some sort of accountability here. And it has to be very explicit. You need to know that your partner acknowledges the hurt that they caused. Without that, again, we can't go further. Without that, trust cannot be rebuilt, especially if you're the one on the receiving end of that broken trust. So whose trust was broken, you need some sense of security, some sense of certainty, some sense of safety, and that's going to help you take the necessary steps to move forward. So you need that type of commitment from your partner. And again, either you can do that alone, you have a partner who's aware enough to do that, or if they're willing to at least have a third party, then sometimes it can take some more time and another person to be involved. So it really depends on the situation here. But the second step is that accountability from the person who broke the trust. Really important. All right. Now, assuming that your partner is taking accountability and that you're both willing to give the relationship another chance. So you pick the card of, I'm going to rebuild trust, or I'm going to at least give my partner another chance because part of me wants that. And that's the one that I'm going to choose from step one. And from step two, I have my partner's acknowledgement and awareness that they broke the trust, and they're willing to take accountability for the next steps, and they're willing to acknowledge the hurt that it caused, and they're willing to give this another chance as well. When you have those two elements, we can go to steps 3, 4, and 5. Let me just take a sip of water. All right. Now, the third step in rebuilding trust is that you both need to understand what happened for things to get to this point. You both need to have a level of understanding of what was the reason for the trust to be broken, for there to be, for example, cheating. Why wasn't one partner able to say no to the infidelity? Why did they go through with it? And so understand what happened and what led to it is a really important part in rebuilding trust, that you both have a sense of clarity, and that will lead to steps 4 and 5. There are different reasons why someone cheats, and I'm going to mention 2 here. The first big one is that the relationship has issues or had issues, and that led to the infidelity. Many people who cheat tend to seek what they're not getting in the relationship, so it's crucial to go, what was my part in it? What was your part in it? What led to us, for example, having unmet needs? For us to having unmet needs, or for us to feel like there was a lack of affection. Maybe there was a need for more variety. Maybe our relationship was becoming stagnant. Maybe I was dedicating a lot of time at work or dedicating a lot of time to the kids, and you felt left out, and therefore that led to the infidelity. And so you get to have this very honest conversation about what happened for things to come to this point. And again, a big reason is that the relationship in itself had some cracks and had some issues. And that led to someone looking for their needs to be met, for example, outside of the relationship. That's a really, really common one. It's not the only one. I'll get to the second one, but that's a very common one. And I remember when I was attracted to someone else and had a thought of cheating. First, if I look at the issues that we had in our relationship, the reason I was looking outside of the relationship was partly because this other person supplied things that I was longing for in my relationship. But there is a big illusion with this, because I was only experiencing someone through one lens, through one particular setting, or in certain particular settings. I wasn't dealing with them from A to Z the whole day through the ups and downs. I was experiencing more of the highs with one particular person. So of course, my needs were being met. Of course, I was seeing more of the good sides. And so that is that illusion that comes with this first part, is we seek things outside of the relationship. And if we're seeking that through someone else, then we're basically supplying only one or two or just a few things, a handful of things. But we're not dealing with that person on a day-to-day basis. We don't see all of the different, let's say, colors of the palette that they have, or we don't deal with conflict usually with this person, or, we're basically having only good times with that person, generally speaking, as always. But that's the idea. It's an illusion. But we do want to look at what led to that. Was there anything in our relationship that was lacking, that wasn't communicated, or anything that was leading to us being at this point? And so that is a big, big one. The relationship had issues. So it's really focused on the relationship. The second is that the person who broke the trust was basically selfish, was basically looking for short-term pleasure, and they saw an opportunity. There was an opportunity, they took it. And today we have a lot of opportunity to, let's say, for infidelity for infidelity to happen. There are many, many opportunities. Many of us work, many of us have a social life, many of us meet new people on a day-to-day basis. And so it can happen even in happy relationships. It's really hard to stay disciplined. This is the difference between that short-term pleasure and that long-term connection that we have in relationships. And so I said selfish before because they're looking for that short-term pleasure, that short-term gain, and we're less focused on what would the impact be on the relationship. And we're also not looking at the bigger picture. What do I actually want? Am I ready to sabotage a relationship that has good sides but also has the downsides? Am I willing to work through those things in order to potentially gain much more? Or am I choosing that short-term gain? And so it's really important to differentiate those. When we're building a healthy relationship, we need to look at the long game. We can't just be focused on the short-term pleasures. And so we really need to be disciplined in order to build that healthy, loving relationship. And when someone cheats, some people, it is because they're very focused on what am I gaining right now? And they're really focused on that short-term pleasure, and they have a hard time understanding that a relationship that is healthy, that is loving, that is long-term, is very focused on building something through the ups and the downs. It's not only going to be highs. It's not only going to be roses all the time. It also will come with hardships. And so we have to have that courage to go through the hardships, learn to overcome them. And again, we have many opportunities today to potentially cheat or potentially be attracted to someone else or potentially look at what is lacking in my relationship. What is lacking in my relationship? What could this person supply that I'm not getting? And so today we have more and more opportunities in a sense. And that's why I'm saying even happy relationships can go through infidelity, unfortunately, because again, it's hard to stay disciplined. It's not as easy as we think. It does take commitment to say, I love this person through the ups and the downs. And for the downs, we're going to learn how to overcome them. That takes work, that takes effort, and again, that takes commitment. And so the question is, am I willing to preserve what I have and grow what I have? Or, and therefore, am I strong enough to say no to the short-term pleasure in order to have something more long-term and a deeper connection with my partner, something that takes time and effort to rebuild and to build? And so that is the that is the third step, is to say, we both need to understand what happened. Is it because the relationship had issues, or is it basically something that came more because we were lacking that perspective as to that short-term pleasure and that long-term connection that we're trying to build? And am I aware that it does take effort, it does take work to be in a relationship and to go through the motions that a relationship comes with? Emotions fluctuate. We're not the same every day. We evolve. We experience new things together, whether it's the good or the bad. And so we need to be committed enough to do this together and committed enough to say no thanks when an opportunity comes up. Because again, we have the long-term goal in mind and not just the short term. All right. Step 4. Step 4, once you have an understanding of what happened to reach this point, and you might resonate with the points that I just gave you as to what leads to infidelity, what leads to broken trust. Depending on your situation, it might be something different. So really go into what happened. The fourth step is to go, all right, now that we know what happened and we have some more understanding and we've been curious enough to understand what happened for each of us here and what led to my partner cheating or breaking the trust, we both now in this fourth step need to agree on what needs to happen for this to not happen again. And this is really important because we can have the commitment, we can decide to be accountable, we can understand what happened. But if we're not agreeing on what needs to happen for us to feel supported in this not happening again, then the foundations will still be wobbly. So you could do this together, just the two of you. You could also seek someone external, maybe through couples therapy, someone who can help you reconnect and go, all right, how do we take or discuss the steps needed in order for this to not happen again? So it really depends here. What you are looking here is not to blame each other, not to go, you did this wrong, you did this right, etc. It's to go, what needs to happen for the relationship to become stronger and for it to even become stronger than it was before the infidelity, before the trust was broken. And here are some places to start. Some places that I've seen work really well for couples. Again, take this and apply it to your own situation. You get to decide what needs to happen in your specific situation, depending also on step 3. But some places to start. First, and a very important one, is to discuss non-negotiables. You want to create a supportive environment for you to rebuild that trust, for you to rebuild that safety and that security and that certainty that you're going to both take the necessary steps. You want to discuss non-negotiables, deal breakers, things that would basically make your efforts, how do you want to say it? You want to discuss the non-negotiables, meaning things that could re-break that trust, if that makes sense. So things, for example, like, well, we're going to discuss that a non-negotiable is that if one of us decides to cheat again, or if you decide to cheat again, let's say if it's one person who cheated here, well, my non-negotiable is that then we're done. So we're going to do everything we can to not get to that point, but that means that if it does happen again, then that's it. I'm not going to give you another chance. That's your choice here. You get to choose what your non-negotiables are. And that takes courage. That takes a lot of energy to go, well, I'm going to set certain boundaries, certain non-negotiables, certain deal breakers, and I'm potentially ready to walk away if it doesn't work out. That takes, again, a lot of courage. And so, but that is also part of the fourth step here of going, we need to have some sort of agreement of what needs to happen and also the consequences of certain behaviors. So I'm willing to rebuild trust. Great that you're also willing to rebuild trust. Let's say we're understanding what happened. Now, if it happens again, then I'm not going to be willing to forgive. I'm not going to be able to do that. This has to be the last time, for example. And another one is also to create that supportive system in a way is to, and to support the third point of what happened is, well, how about we learn about what we need in our relationship? If the infidelity was caused due to relationship issues, then there's a pretty big chance that some needs were not being met. And I will say this over and over again in my content, that when someone feels like their needs are being met, meaning that they feel loved, they feel connected to you, they feel like they matter, they feel safe, there is a very small chance that they leave the relationship or that they cheat. That it can happen when it comes to infidelity again. It can happen if it's for the short-term pleasure, but generally speaking, people who have their needs met do not look outside of the relationship to fulfill their needs, or at least the needs that they want to have met in their relationship. And so you do want to go, all right, so in order for us to have our needs met, to feel loved, all of that, we get to look at that. We get to be curious about, hey, these are the efforts that I'm going to make. These are the efforts that I'm going to make. Do they align with what we actually need? And what is potentially lacking so that we can discuss that? Areas to look at, and a very powerful tool that I always recommend is your love languages. How do we each want to feel loved? Let's not assume that we each want to feel loved in the way we think we each want to feel loved. Let's not assume that we have the same way that we want to feel loved. Let's not treat each other the way we think the other wants to be treated. We all have a very unique set of needs. And one, again, powerful tool to make sure that your need for love, for connection is met, is to figure out your love language and to figure out what is most important to you to feel loved. And I'll link some resources, masterclasses in the description that speak to this specific part. How to meet your needs, how to figure out your love languages. Really important to go, how can we create a supportive environment so that we're not just looking at the past and what happened and what led to the infidelity, but we're also looking forward and looking, what are the stepping stones that we can set for us to have a fair chance to rebuild this trust? One stepping stone can be, well, these are the boundaries that we're going to set. These are the non-negotiables that we're going to commit to. Second stepping stone can be, let's figure out our love languages. How do we each want to feel loved? The third stepping stone can look at what are other types of needs that we want to have met in the relationship that are maybe not being met. And what does that look like? Let's discuss that. And so you have these different stepping stones that you need to discuss in order to paint a picture as to what has to happen for the infidelity to not happen again, or for trust to not for trust to not be broken again. Really important to create habits. That's what you want to create habits and these stepping stones, like I said, that support your needs and and that support your goal of not cheating again, of rebuilding that trust. And again, I'll go back to, and if that doesn't happen, if we're not committing to that, or if we fail to commit or to respect our boundaries, or all of that, then what are the consequences? We don't want ambiguity here. If you're both very clear on what needs to happen to move forward, then you both need to be willing to commit to that. And there has to also be a clear picture of what are we willing to do if that doesn't happen? What is that other side of it? And that again takes courage. I'm not saying it's easy, especially if you want the relationship to work and you're putting a lot of effort in it. It's hard to go, well, if there is a disrespect of a boundary, then I'm out, or whatever you choose to do. And so that takes a lot of courage. I will say that. So you get to create those habits, set those stepping stones, and go, what has to happen for this to not happen again? And both agree on that. Both get curious about each other's sides and go, what is your perspective? What is my perspective? Let's come to an agreement so that there is no ambiguity. And we're coming to step 5. Step 5, if your trust has been broken, this won't be the easiest step, but it's a really important one, just like the 4 first steps. I do want to point this one out because when you're rebuilding trust, especially if you've been on the receiving end, if your trust has been broken, if you've gone through a series of emotions and feelings and thoughts and just a lot of confusion and anger and all of that, and you're potentially going to decide to put in the effort to rebuild trust, and you're going to, for example, choose to go that path. Let's say your partner is on board. Let's say you're clear on what happened. Let's say you're clear on what has to happen from now on. So you've gone through the 4 first steps. This one can sometimes be very hard to do, but very important to do. And if you're aware of it, it's already a very important and necessary step. If your trust has been broken, you've been hurt, just like I said. When your partner is making efforts and is taking accountability and is willing to change and is starting to walk the talk and is starting to make efforts here and there, it can be hard to acknowledge those efforts because they won't necessarily be the way you want them to be. They won't necessarily tick all the boxes right away. Again, trust isn't an overnight thing that we build. It takes time. So you might have big expectations on your partner. You might be so hurt that it's hard to forgive and it's hard to release that resentment. So you're going to maybe test your partner. You're going to point out what they are not doing because that's your way of, getting back at them maybe, or expressing your anger, expressing your hurt. I get that. I really get that. If you have been hurt, if you have been on the other side of the infidelity, I get it. So this is why it isn't the easiest step that I'm going to say. But if your partner is making efforts, you do need to be open to acknowledging those efforts. You do need to encourage change. You do need to celebrate what is going well. And again, I'm assuming that there are very clear boundaries from step 4 clear boundaries from step 4. There are agreements in step 4, habits that you're creating, that you're agreeing to create, all of that. And when your partner does make even the slightest efforts at first, you do want to acknowledge that. You do want to point it out. You do want to accept in a way and receive that effort. Because your partner who is willing to rebuild the trust, who acknowledges their mistake, who acknowledges the hurt that they have done, they also need to see that their efforts are not in vain. They need to see that there is a point in putting in the efforts as well. And as hurt as you can be, as angry as you can be, you also need to choose to be open enough to receive the efforts that they will make. That's a big, big thing that I see when rebuilding trust is the partner who is so hurt has trouble receiving the efforts from the partner who is willing to rebuild the trust after they have made a mistake. So it isn't the easiest, but it's a really important one because you can have all of the 4 first steps in place, and this one is the one that becomes an obstacle. And this one is the one that sometimes can push your partner away. And I'm guessing that if you're willing to rebuild trust, that is not something that you want. You don't want to push your partner away. And so I know that the behaviors might look like it. So you really need to put on your wise cap on and go, what do I want long term? Am I willing to rebuild the trust? Yes. All right, I've gone through the steps. Now I need to be open to receiving the efforts that my partner is going to make and express that. Not assume that they know I'm grateful or I'm open because I'm still in this relationship and I'm open to receiving. I need to express that. I need to express appreciation for the efforts that they're making so that they see a point in continuing to make efforts, so that they see that their efforts are received. A partner who doesn't see that they're making you happy, or who sees or who thinks that they're not making you happy, tends to start to close off, shut down, walk away. And that's what I'm guessing you want to avoid if you want to rebuild that trust. So how can you be open to becoming aware of their efforts, pointing them out, acknowledging what's going well, and starting to release that resentment, for example, or that hurt, so that you can be open to that. And that's a process on its own, but it's a really, really important step because I see that this one can sometimes sabotage the whole process. All right. Let me just recap the 5 steps. Number 1, have space to process all of the raw feelings that you're going to feel. If you're the one whose trust was broken, you need that space. You need to normalize the pain that you're going through, the hurt that you're going through, and really acknowledge those. That's the first step. And to choose if you want to rebuild the trust. If you want to choose to play that card that I was mentioning before. Play the card of, well, I'm feeling this. These are all of my cards on the table. Which card am I going to choose? So you get to choose, do I want to rebuild the trust? So processing the raw feelings, having space to do that, and choosing which card you want to play. Which card you're going to go for, at least for now, so that you can take your next steps and you can decide what needs to happen from there. Second step is you need to have an explicit acknowledgement from your partner that they are taking accountability for their behaviors, that they are feeling some sort of remorse, that they are seeing the impact of their behaviors, that they are seeing the pain that they caused you, and they are taking full responsibility for that. And yes, they might have gained a lot of things from the infidelity, if it was infidelity. They might have had a short-term pleasure. They might have had a great time. They might have had all of these things. Yes, and they are acknowledging the hurt that they caused. And so we are looking for that, oh, I made a mistake and I'm seeing the consequences of my mistake. That's what you're looking for. And without that, we can't go further. You do need a partner who's willing to take accountability and willing to rebuild the trust. Third step is understand what happened. As a couple, understand what happened for things to come to this point. And again, you might do this alone, so just the two of you. You might have someone like a third party come into it. And I will say though, when you're having these conversations, if you have step 1 and step 2 in place and you're both willing to rebuild trust, if you're processing the infidelity and the broken trust with someone external, I do recommend to have someone who is not necessarily only objective. I'm not looking necessarily for objectivity here. That's not what I suggest. What I suggest is someone who can help you rebuild a relationship that is stronger than the one that you had before the infidelity. So, not someone who will start to take one side and blame the other, um, or who will side with the partner who cheated, which doesn't necessarily happen, but I'm just going to say who doesn't take these unhealthier sides, but who actually looks at the relationship as a whole instead of you as individuals. They can accept and normalize the hurt. They can get the other person's perspective on why they cheated, on why they broke trust, so they can look at that on an individual level. But the goal has to be common, has to be what is it that we're going to do to rebuild your relationship, to rebuild the connection, to rebuild the trust. That's what you're looking for in someone when you're looking for outside support, someone who has the relationship in mind. And not everyone has that. So that might take some trial and error there, but someone who has your relationship in mind and your common goal in mind. Really important. Step 4, understand what needs to happen from now on so that this doesn't happen again. So remember the stepping stones. Remember the habits that you want to create so that you have a supportive system and you're both agreeing on what you can do to feel supported in rebuilding trust. So you're actually creating that environment, looking at boundaries, looking at love languages, looking at your needs, so you can tackle all of these things that were potentially not addressed before if there were issues with the relationship. And 5th is if you're on the receiving end, so if your trust was broken, acknowledging your partner's efforts if they are making efforts. So encouraging change, celebrating what's working better. And I'm not saying again that's easy, but that's a really important step so that you can start to see evolution and progress in this whole repair process. I'm going to call it repair process because when there has been a broken trust has been broken, you need to repair that. And that is a process. Again, trust that has been broken typically takes time. It can take a few years even to really fully heal. There will be times where you will still be triggered if you are on the receiving end. You will go through a variety of emotions. So you will be going through quite a lot and it's a process. So I hope that these 5 steps can kickstart your process of rebuilding trust, can help you feel more confident in what needs to happen if I do choose to rebuild the trust. What are the important elements that need to be in place for it to happen? And every single one of these steps builds up upon the others. So they're really important as a whole, but also individually. So really look at them and go, what can apply to my situation? And of course, every situation is unique. Every relationship is unique. So I trust that you will take this and decide what works in your situation and can take these general guidelines as a guide, as a process that you can start to look at, to have more clarity, start to heal, start to feel more confident in your next decisions. So those are the 5 steps to rebuild trust with a focus on rebuilding trust after infidelity. If you are having a lot of doubts about whether to give your relationship even another chance, or maybe you're even hearing a lot of external advice from people about what you should do and you're really confused, you're not sure what to follow, I'm going to link other pieces of content that I've created for you in the description here. All right. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for being here. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't yet. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't yet. And also if you want to be notified about new content. All right. I'll see you again soon. Thanks for being here.